Hey, this is Driver88, and if you didn't know, the 911 Turbo recently turned 50 years old. The incredibly famous nameplate from Porsche is a car that I have not had on the channel yet so far, so I had to track down a 911 Turbo somehow. Of course, my friends at Cavallo Prestige have a 992 Turbo S, and it made me think that it's kind of right time to drive one because over its 5 years of tenure, it is now very soon to be discontinued, making way for a hybrid model. Now, as much as the 911 Turbo nameplate is so famous, the Turbo S is just as much or even more of a revered nameplate. And we're going to look at the used market for that car and the history of it. The first Turbo S, I think, is the 930 Turbo Special Order, but maybe with the slant nose, but maybe the 964 Turbo S Leichtbau is the first Turbo S. Let me know in the comments, those two incredibly famous and expensive propositions today. But let's head to the 992 Turbo S, as it's just about to be finished production. We'll take one for a drive. And recently we've driven all sorts of Ferraris. I've got behind the wheel of the 296, the Tributo, the Roma, all sorts of Ferraris. So I'm so happy to be back in this car and to compare it to those other ponies. Despite being 5 years old now and finished production essentially, the Turbo S is still an absolute beast compared to its supercar rivals, a lot of them that we've driven recently to compare to. 3.7 litres of twin turbo flat six, 641 horsepower and 800 newton meters. But if you strap this car to a dyno, it's likely making 800 newton meters at the wheels. And that's how we get pretty much a low 10-second quarter mile time, 10.1, 10.2, even on crappy surfaces. If you have Cup 2R tyres, a good surface, and the lightweight package, which costs you 20,000 Australian dollars, you could dip ever so just slightly into the nines for what is a comfortable daily driver. So one of my favorite areas of the Turbo S is, of course, it's behind, and it is ever so wide. We've got, I think, 305 rear tires on this car with staggered 20 to 21 inch wheels. Here's something that you may disagree with me with. The sports exhaust, it's a $7,000 or so option, and it comes with two oval tips. I personally prefer the standard twin square tip exhaust that just seem to blend together far better than this. And as you'll hear in a second, this is not the most inspiring startup and revs. Unfortunately, you can only rev it to 4,000 RPM, and that is likely to be the case with the hybrid version as well. When it comes to outright performance though, 330 kilometers as a top speed is certainly enough. So welcome to the interior of the Turbo S. Now the first thing we're going to lose with the hybrid is this tack here. Now unfortunately it's all going digital, the new dashes on the hybrid, so we're going to lose that, which I think they should keep, to be honest. There's enough screens in here as it is. Now with this car you can also have a Porsche design clock if you want, just not the standard chrono that we've got here. We've got adaptive sports seats, which are relatively comfortable. They've got more side bolstering than I imagined. Now, these rear seats, the good thing about these rear seats is, believe it or not, I've done this, you can fit a full-size suitcase across the back here and one in the front. So it's great for long trips with your significant other, etc. Now, the interior of a 911, the good thing about this is there's a lack of creaks and rattles and stuff in pretty much all the 992 range, at least what I've experienced anyway. The leather's lovely. You can pick any stitching color you wish. We've got the Burmeister sound system, as I said before, leather steering wheel. You can get the full buckets for about $9,000 in these, but you don't see full buckets in too many 911 Turbo S's. I love the interior of these. You can also pick the heritage design if you wish, and a whole bunch of other things. I think this interior doesn't really need much of an update, but we'll see and compare it to the hybrid in good time. Now, when it comes to Turbo S's, of course, they've never come cheap. When this car was released in 2020, it was 516,000 Australian dollars. I know that that's an insane number, but today, if you want to order one in 2025, you're looking at $603,000. So we've jumped about 17% of sticker price in the space of just 5 years. Of course, the hybrid then again will probably jump another 5% on top, which makes these look a little bit of potentially a buy in a used example. We'll look at the used market right now. Now let's talk about the used market here in Australia for Turbo S's. Now, there's 540 or so 911s for sale, and just 16 of them are Turbo S variants. And you've probably guessed that the most popular variant is the 992. That's 11 out of the 16, and that's partly because the 992 came out with a Turbo S before the 99 Turbo, which is kind of peculiar. And if you're wondering what the most expensive 911 that I've seen online available on car sales, it actually is a Turbo S, the 993 Turbo S. Incredibly rare, just 345 examples made. This one is a UK imported example for 1.3 million Australian dollars. Don't freak out too much. Now, of course, there are more expensive 911s out there, like your 74 RSs and things like that, but you don't particularly often see them on an online car sales site like this. So Turbo S's, particularly with the 992s, and just in general, they're cars that didn't really make money, so to speak, like a GT3 or 3RS. And generally, they're a customer who spent a huge amount of money, were happy to use it, and then not really make any money or lose an absolute ton on their car, and then maybe enjoy another one afterwards. And very, very few of these Turbo S's are trading near sticker price, and in particular, the 992 model. With the standard turbo, you're going to be looking at decent losses on these cars. They'll depreciate faster than almost any other model, but that also makes them kind of a little bit more interesting for a second-hand purchaser because you have a wider range of specs and cars to choose from. Now, if you've run out of time to spec your Turbo S brand new, what sort of things should you be looking for? Well, being the top model, it pretty much comes with everything standard. In particular, the carbon ceramic brakes. If you didn't know, Porsche offered carbon ceramic brakes before any other brand back in, I think, the year 2001 or so on the 996 Turbo. And here they are in standard, of course, being yellow. They're some of the largest brakes I've ever seen, 410mm on the discs with 10 pistons. Just utterly incredible. Gentian blue, a very common color. This is a no-cost option. Me personally, I would choose the sort of Fuchs exclusive design looking wheels against some crayon paint. I think that would be the spec for me. Something else you may want to also pick as options is the lift kit, and that's 5,000 Australian dollars. But we've been getting over speed humps and going around the place pretty easily today without any issues. So, can you drive a 992 Turbo S every day? If you don't have a completely stuffed pair of hips, absolutely you can. It's incredibly comfortable and it turns into a supercar beater when you want it to. Carbon ceramic brakes might be, say, not something that everybody wants on their car due to the potential cost of replacing them. But I feel like if you're spending this much money on a car and you're worried about replacing them, this is probably not a car you should be looking at buying in the first place. So performance is utterly astonishing. For a 5-year-old car, it feels no slower than all these supercars that we've driven recently. We've been in the STO, the 296, Tributo, etc. Just the absolute efficiency at which the power is delivered to the ground, it feels way more than 641 horsepower, absolutely way more. But we know that Porsche's often lying about these things. The sound is not particularly, I guess, inspiring, but you've got bigger things to worry about when you're going this fast. Now, speaking of speed, if you are looking at a used Turbo S, as the 765 LT Spider just passes us. If you are looking at a used Turbo S, you do have certainly two sorts of options. One, the great thing about owning a Porsche is that you can extend its warranty out to 15 years if you wish. The other is that if you put just some software and just a downpipe on this car, you can get deep into the nines and well over 800 horsepower with very, very small amounts of mods. This engine is just incredible how much power you can get with a very, very small change in the air and boost that it receives. And the gear changes, I mean, they're rapid. Porsche's always known to have incredible PDK gearboxes. It's no difference here. The launch control is utterly brutal. 2.7 seconds claimed. You can get 2.5 if you can get it to hook up. And as I said, if you put Cup 2Rs on these cars, you can rival the sort of lap times of the GT3 RS and the GT3 because there is just so much grip on offer. But that's not really what Porsche would like to tell you. Now, when it comes to putting the car into Sport Plus and turning up everything up to 11, the car is lacking that steering feel. That's my favorite steering feel in the 3RS that we drove earlier last year. But we do have, of course, all-wheel drive grip, and this is just more of a multi-purpose car to drive. It's not a track-focused thing. Now, the hybrid, of course, will have at least, I'm thinking, 720 horsepower, that being Porsche horsepower, so it's probably going to be making more like 780 horsepower, something like that. The game will be moved on once again. Will you be desperately needing this extra power? I guess it depends on the sort of person you are. But one thing is for certain, that 1640 kilo weight of this thing will probably be increased to, who knows, 1700 kilos or even more. And thus, many of those Porsche obsessed people become unhappy with these cars getting ever larger and ever heavier. Now, speaking of comparing this to those other supercars that we've had on the channel, the other thing I love about 911s, notice my head is not hitting the roof, and I'm only 180 centimeters, but in the 296 and the STO, I could not fit a helmet in those cars. And you know, even the sort of gentleman driver likes to have maybe a couple of track days a year. In these turbos and GT3s, I can more than comfortably fit a helmet in the car and sit up straight rather than having to turn myself into an Italian pretzel to get a helmet on in an STO or a Huracan or any sort of other Italian car.